argues that whatever is constructed can be deconstructed. So there's something that says women have to be doing certain jobs, women have to be a certain way, women have to be that way, men have to be that way. It's socially constructed. It's not the absolute truth. You see? So women not necessarily have to be the one cleaning or doing dishes or cooking or taking care of the kids. Men can also do it. But we are living in a society that's so patriarchal where they assign certain roles to women and others to men. And that's been constructed throughout history. And we reproduce that cycle instead of challenging the discourse. That's the dominant discourse. I mean, I grew up in a family where my dad expected my mom to cook and clean, wash his clothes, right? And my mom expected my dad in some way, not quite actually, she was very independent, but in some way she expected my dad to bring money to the house, right? That was his job. Something broke, my dad had to fix it.
Yeah.
But she couldn't fix it herself. But she felt like, oh, I'm a woman, that's your dad's job.
Squashing the cockroaches. That's
exactly
my job.
Right. So that's what Jacques Derrida goes against. We have to deconstruct.
Oh dear.
No. Deconstruct reality. Certain realities had, the way they are presented to us, because they don't have to be that way. Understand? They don't have to be that way. So whatever is constructed can be deconstructed. Now, my problem with post-structuralist theories, so what do you do then when you deconstruct something? What is next? Okay, this is how it's constructed. We need to deconstruct it. Then what is next? And so on. And what do you do next?
Reconstruct it.
Then you keep reconstructing it, because you can reconstruct, depending on how you reconstruct it, you might put the same form of violence, same form of oppression. It's okay to deconstruct it, right? But then what do you do? What do you do with that deconstruction? What do you do with it? Does that make sense? So you have a group that's been oppressed historically, right? You say, no, it doesn't have to be that way. We need to fight against it. And the oppressed group emerge, take over the political structure. Then the same oppressed group who used to be victimized by many forms of oppression are reproducing the same type of oppression. And you have seen that, we have witnessed that in Africa, in many parts of the world. Countries that were colonized, right, by the British, by Spain, and they fought for their independence. They became independent, and those who came to power are producing the same thing, if not worse. And how do you change the structure? Well, one can blame everything on the legacy of colonialism, but what about us? Don't we have a responsibility to say, wait a minute, I was victimized by this form of oppression. I'm not going to reproduce it. I'm going to do something better. But unfortunately, that's how oppression works. You see? And that's how it works, unfortunately. So we need to be mindful of that. Okay, we want revolution. We want independence. Okay, here it is. You get it. What are you going to do with it? That's the challenge. And the middle class, who somewhat fought in the independent movement, wanted to be in power. Because they feel like they deserve it. They are entitled to it. They are the ones who have the opportunity to earn a college degree, and they feel they are the knowledgeable group who have to run the country. And what do? They oppose the same thing. They oppress their own people. So the colonizers left, and they are doing the same thing that the colonizers did to them, right? So that's how, this is the question that I have about post-structuralism, right? Theories. Okay, once you deconstruct whatever you think is need to be deconstructed, what do you do next? So that's the question. Yeah. And like I said, they completely refuse absolute truth. Because there is such thing as absolute truth. There are multiple truths. I have my own girls, right? Because what you think is the truth may not necessarily be the truth for me. You see? But someone who believes in positivism would disagree with me. The truth is there. There is only the truth. And we have to respect it. It's out there. The truth is constructed. It's something that's constructed. It's constructed. What you call the truth may not be truth for me. It might be a big lie. right?
Well,
And you
it's
may have
like
your
a
own truth.
subset of a bigger truth.
That's correct. But it's still constructive, no? Isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Anyway, so I skip some part of the chapter. We'll talk about validity. And, I skip, but I'm going to briefly talk about it. What makes your research valid? When you do research, before I talk about this, because I sort of skip. When you do a research, conduct research, you're done with it, present it. What do you think is going to make people believe it's valid? It's a question.
Well, there are different types of validity.
Huh?
There are different types of validity you can try to obtain.
Uh-huh. There are different types. But yeah, there is communicative validity where you go back to the community, you sort of, you present to them your analysis, your interpretation of the data you collect. And then it's subjected to different interpretations, right? So that's what I would recommend. If you do a research, right, the people share their stories with you. When I say stories are data. You sit down and you tell you the story. You take record, video, take whatever, however, you take notes, that's data. Okay? Now, you take their stories and analyze them. But you don't analyze those stories through your lenses, right? Because there isn't the absolute truth in the stories. There are multiple truths, right? So you're gonna analyze the story based on your lenses, based on your ideology, based on your agenda, because we all have an agenda as researchers. Now, your interpretation of the stories might not reflect their reality. You might completely distort, misrepresent the stories. Now, to ensure that doesn't happen, to make sure that your research is valid, your interpretation is valid, you have to go back to you should go back to the community and say, hey, here it is. Here's my interpretation of your story. Here's my interpretation of the data. And they will have different interpretation of the data. Now, if they agree with your interpretation, then that makes it valid. Because at the end of the day, this is not your stories. It's their stories. If they tell you, wait a minute, you are completely misrepresenting my stories, then you should listen to them. Now, that would be the communicative aspect of it. Then you have the other type of validity, which is the I can't think of the word. I'm going to explain what it is. When you do a research, then as a result of your research, policymakers want to enact policies as a result of your research. Then that's when you really make a difference. So if you do a research and people take it on and try to enact policies that's going to benefit the community that you do the research with, and that you should be proud of it. Unfortunately, there are many research that have been done, that have been conducted, they just sit somewhere accumulating dust. Nothing's done. I mean, you satisfy with your research, you share with the participants, but nothing's done. I mean, I did two researches in the last 5 years. One was in ethnographic research. I mean, I look at how the achievement gap between English language learners and monolingual speakers, right? Okay, after I collected the data and analyzed it and so on and so forth, and I wrote a book. I mean, that was my dissertation. And I published it as a book, and I sent a copy to the teachers. Even before I did that, I showed them my analysis. And I also show my analysis to my colleagues who were more experienced with analyzing data than I was then. My chair, I said, okay, what do you think of my interpretation of the data? They would give me feedback, and then I take it to the teachers, to the students, and I said, this is what I made of your stories. Am I listening to your stories accurately or not? Of course, they give me feedback, and I went back and changed my analysis, so on and so forth. But has my research made a difference? I don't know. I mean, the book is out, it's published. People, I'm sure, are reading it, but I don't know if it makes a difference. Now, I would know if it makes a difference if people, policymakers, decide to do something to accommodate English language learners in our school system as a result of my research. Does that make sense? So, that's that. But let me briefly finish my PowerPoint, and then we'll engage in a larger conversation. Then you have the critical race theory. I'm very familiar with that, but I'm not gonna spend too much time. basically, critical theory saying, in the 70s and 80s, and prior to that, the voice of people of color in the legal field were not heard. See, remember, the legal field is very male-dominated to begin with. Not many people of color, particularly women of color, had the opportunity to go to law school. Even those who were lawyers, they feel like their voices were not represented. So they had to challenge the paradigm. You know, that sort of silenced the voice. And David Bell was a lawyer, and he recently died last year. He's the pioneer of critical theory. And then you have Richard Delgado, and the legal field, and in our field, Royalism Billings, who sort of brought critical theory into education. So basically what they're arguing is that our stories, our narratives matter. One of the major components of critical theory is narratives. But narratives then, even until now, seem to be looked down upon. If you tell your stories, unless they expect you to be objective, always. That's the dominant positive approach. You have to be objective. So if you tell your story, you're being subjective. Therefore, your stories are not really important, don't really matter much. Your narrative don't matter much. And critical theory argue, no, wait a minute. Our stories matter. Because our stories are rooted in our daily lives, in our daily experiences as people of color. Therefore, you need to listen. See? So that's the whole argument about critical theory. And then you have the LACRIT. LACRIT is people, Latino, Chicano, Chicana, who somewhat adopt critical theory to talk about their own experiences. You have Yoso. I forgot her first name. Gosh. Tara Yoso. Tara Yoso is one of the figures. Tara Yoso. And you have Bernard, but I can't go for her last name, first name now. Bernard. She's those two. They are Chicanas. Those two Chicanas. They have drawn on critical theory to talk about their own experiences as Chicanas. The struggle. You see, and basically that's really the core of critical theory. And what they give in the book is it's a very short summary of critical theory. So essentially that's what critical theory is all about. And I must add, it challenges, in the beginning it challenges only the racist structure of the country, of this country. But younger generations try to link racism to other form of ism, like classism, sexism, so on and so forth. But the focus in the beginning was more on race, not so much on class, not so much on gender, not so much on sex. But over the years, it has somewhat shifted from that narrow paradigm to a paradigm that is more inclusive. Make sense? And then queer theory, again, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Women in the movement, they spoke on behalf of women, but they did not take into account there are women who are women, and they share a different sexual orientation. So they were victimized by two forms of oppression, sexism and homophobia. They say, wait a minute, okay, you women betting on our behalf, great. But you also need to understand that not all women share the same sexual orientations. What about us who are not straight? We have our own struggle. We have our own struggle. We are women and lesbian and bisexual and transgender. So our voice is coming from that marginalized position need to be heard. And that's how we have queer theory. Does that make sense? All right. So that's my 50-cent presentation. So anything you want to add to what I said? Yes?
Oh, when you were talking about hegemony and ideology, I'd like to just present a different different point of view on that. The dentists make money every year from us because they insist on a twice-a-year checkup. So, the ideology is you better go to the dentist and get that checkup. Okay, that's the dominant ideology. Do you buy into it?
No.
I do. I don't like having cavities and drilling and toothaches and everything. So I go in for those regular checkups because that ideology serves my interests. It's ideology nonetheless. It's hegemony nonetheless. But it serves my interest.
And you have this. You have the capital, the social capital. You have the money. You have the health insurance to go to that, to see that.
Oh, I don't have the insurance. I do it anyway out of my own pocket.
But you have the money. What about those who don't have the money?
Right.
They might think, yes, it's a great idea, but I don't have the money. See?
They'll buy into the ideology, but they can't be a part of it.
Right. Exactly. Right. Some people do. Anything you want to add? Or otherwise, take a break. Should I break? Everybody? Break? Okay. Break. We'll take a break. All right.
Okay. There's some bread over there.
And there's bread. So,
Get my sandwich out of the trash. I can't believe you did that.
Do you want me to upload?
Half the sandwich.
Sometime, sometime tomorrow afternoon, would that be a good?